In this video we're going to render concrete. Now, choosing colour depends entirely on the colour of your concrete, which can pretty much be anything with, you know, the dyes they have today. So you could have something that has a pinkish hue, a bluish hue, very dark grey, very light grey, etc., whatever. But the key to rendering the concrete is to use a kind of a warm marker and a cool marker together. Okay, so I'm going to have a bit of a, I've already had a bit of a practice, but I'm going to have a bit of a practice in terms of colours. So I'm looking at this, and this is a fairly cool grey. Now it's relatively dark, your concrete isn't always that dark. And this one here, it's called Satin. It's a pro marker called Satin, very useful colour. It's sort of a dirty pink colour, but it's definitely warm. Now equally you can use a mix of cool grey and warm grey markers to achieve the sort of concrete effect. But this one I think is a cool grey 3, so it's a little dark, but I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. Now, well, I'm not sure which one I'm going to use first. Okay, I'm going to have a go at using this one first. Now the key to rendering concrete, it's very simple and it's very quick and it's very messy, so you sort of do this like you don't give a damn. So let's have a go and see how it turns out. So first of all, I'm going to put my cool grey on. And you see I'm doing it like scribbling it on, and I'm leaving, you know, a certain amount blank, and that'll be picked up by the other colour. Now again, we're going to layer this on. I'm just going to fill in some of the edges there. We can always go over it. Now the key here is to do it while it's still wet. I'm going to layer this one on now, the pinky. Saturated because they sort of blend together. Now, I'm going to have a go at trying the blender. See, does that make any difference? So you can kind of see this sort of, it looks like concrete. The grey makes it look like concrete, all right. I just want to see what the blender does. So I'm actually putting the blender, you know, the marker that's sort of white, but you're never entirely sure what it does. I just want to see what happens here, because it should be blending the two of them together. Anyway, with the concrete there isn't colourless blender yet. There isn't a whole pile in terms of wrong and right. And the blender actually is, you know, most likely just the alcohol in the marker. So all it has is the alcohol, it has no pigment. So it should blend those quite well. Now I'm just looking here at this. Now you can see it's very, very wet and it's very kind of transparent. So I'm just going to put this a little bit in darker areas where it looks just that bit too pink. And then I'm just going to make it dark around the edge. You know, assuming it was a floor or a concrete floor, that it would be a little darker towards the edges anyway, just by virtue of not getting as much light. Okay. Okay, so you can get a sense of that. Now that's relatively dark. Now the key here, I suppose, is to let it dry. Now that could take a while to dry, but when it dries, you can rub a white chalk over it, and that should give it that sort of chalky concrete look. So I'm just going to try and keep it as I'm going to try and keep you on as long as possible, because I do want to go over this with the chalk. So you see, your concrete is actually very easy, and it gives you an opportunity to use your blender marker. Now you don't have to use the blender if you just keep going over with the two colours. Start with the grey and then the pinky tone, then the grey, then the pinky tone, and just build it up like that. But there is a little bit of trial and error here in terms of achieving the correct colour. But it's not a difficult technique and it doesn't take a long time. In fact, it's almost the opposite to the tile one. The tile one is quite controlled, whereas this is the opposite. This one's quite chaotic. So, you know, in many ways easier to achieve. Okay, it's starting to dry out a little bit now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rub this in areas over it. Yeah, it's still not quite dry enough for this. Yeah, it's not too bad though. So you rub your chalk into it and it just gives that lovely kind of cloudy effect of concrete. And you can do as much or as little of this as you want. So, and like anything, like I keep saying, a lot of this is practice. So just practice some of these effects and see what you achieve. Okay, so there's your concrete